This is Lightning Power Lunch on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
Hitting is part of hockey, obviously you get a situationalized, what happened yesterday, they don't get a penalty for it, and it kind of sucks because one of the guys for our team, didn't finish the game. So it is what it is, We can only look into that, We just have to play hockey, and right now we just have to look for tomorrow's game. I think that's the most important thing right now.
This group's given us everything they have. Sometimes maybe the result on the scoreboard wasn't what we wanted, but the effort was always there. And that's why I've loved this group is they just never quit. Like there's always fighting the dog left. And I think any coach will tell you he would take a team like that anytime. And so I don't expect 9 months of going to war with each other to change now. They're a bunch of gamers.
They're gamers. They're going to need to be a gamer tonight to extend the series, at least for one more game, as the Lightning trail 3-1 in this best-of-7 series of the Florida Panthers. It is a game night. Greg Linnelli with you, along with Dave Mishkin. We're going to have Erik Erlendsson from LightningInsider.com join us soon. He wrote an article that I think caught some people's attention, and we're going to have him on to talk about why he wrote it and what does he anticipate tonight. We did get some news partner yesterday. Aaron Ekblad.
Yeah,
called it. He was going to be most likely suspended, but they gave him an extra game, didn't they?
Yeah, and I said that too. I said don't be surprised if it's more than one game. I didn't know if he would get more than one game. Actually, thinking back on it, Greg, I don't know if Erik is going to agree with this. Probably he will, based on the article that he wrote. It was kind of talking about the over-the-line stuff in the series. Niko Mikkola should have been suspended too. At the time when I saw the fine, I was like, well, he served the game misconduct. Look at the Nikita Kucherov hit on Marcus Nutivaara in Game 2 of the 2019 series between the Lightning and Columbus, for which Kucherov was given a game misconduct. Okay, that was near the end of the game. The outcome was already secure for Columbus. Mikkola's penalty happened at the beginning of the third period when the Panthers were down. Maybe that factored in. But show me the difference between those hits. They are very, very similar, and Kucherov got suspended for one game. So, I don't know. Maybe the league felt that Mikkola already served a period. The Lightning could have won the game based on that power play. Girgensons wasn't hurt. Nutivaara, I think, was. So there are a few differences there. But if you just look at the hit, both guys hit a player who was on his knees, kind of defenseless against the boards. So, I mean, I kind of had, 24 hours to think about it because we got the Mikkola news as we were on the air yesterday. But it is what it is. Like, you can't really control what the DOPS decides to do or not to do. No Ekblad tonight, though, so that will mean Uvis Balinskis will come in to take Ekblad's spot. The D-Corps will look for the Panthers exactly like it did in the first two games of the series. And we'll see if Paul Maurice decides to shake up his forward unit a little bit, too. He had A.J. Greer in for Game 4 instead of Sam Miskevich. See what he decides to do. For the Lightning, no Brandon Hagel. He is out for Game 5. And the Lightning did call up Max Crozier. Very interesting move. First of all, they called him up, and then they called him up now. Like, they didn't call him up at the beginning of the series. They called him up when they're down 3-1. But John Cooper said, as Hedman and Cirelli didn't participate in the morning skate, that they're going to play and Crozier isn't going to play. So we'll monitor that situation. Syracuse is down 0-2 in its series, facing elimination. That's a best of 5, and the Crunch will play Game 3 tomorrow. So I guess it's possible that Crozier is up here just for insurance, and then they'll send it back to Syracuse to play in the game tomorrow, win or lose for the Lightning. I mean, if the Lightning lose tonight, I'm sure Crozier's going back. But if they win tonight and extend the series, maybe Crozier goes back to Syracuse and plays in that playoff game tomorrow. We'll see.
What do we make of that? I know we kind of speculating, but you
Yeah,
type of guy
well, if
just
he's not going to
bring
play, I don't really know what to make of it. But that's
Yeah.
what Coop said. We can get Erik's input. He's coming in the door right now. He's going to get set up.
It's gonna get
Erik wrote it. What my kids call a fire article.
Ooh, yeah. When you said
If my
it,
kids had
fire.
read Erik's article, which, sorry, Erik, I don't think they did, but they would have read it and said, "Oh, Mr. Erlendsson, that article was fire." See me keeping up with the kids' jargon. I'll tee it up while Erik gets situated here. Let's just say that he titled it once called a, quote, garage league, end quote, NHL still slow to change. So obviously he touched on what we've got happening in the series with the hits and everything else. I'm going to shift my laptop as we shift the camera.
Hey, who is
There
that
you
guy?
are, Erik.
Who is that guy?
What's up, buddy?
I said to him this morning, I'm like, not that you're any stranger to Lightning Radio, but
Yeah.
it would be neat to have you on, Erik, to talk specifically about this article because you were moved to write this after what you've seen in a series in which there have been other storylines, and you touched on the fact that the defending throughout the series for the Panthers has been outstanding, and after Game 1 for the Lightning, it's been very, very high as well. But that's really been overshadowed, certainly, by all of the hits, the majors, the suspensions. So why were you kind of compelled to write this article? And for the fans who haven't had a chance to read it, why don't you sum up for us what your point was?
Yeah, so the Garage League statement was made by one of the greatest players to ever play the game in Mario Lemieux. And, there were a lot of things in Mario's time when he was playing. And, the one that obviously stands out is when he took the two-handed slash from Adam Graves right at the start of a power play where Adam Graves two-handed him and broke his wrist.
In the playoffs.
In the playoffs,
Yeah.
It was a May game. So it was deep in the playoffs at that point.
1, 2, 3.
And, Mario was, again, arguably one of the top 5, if not one of the top 3 players to ever play this game. And,
He's the greatest player ever to play the game. Go.
okay. Like, his skill set was, like, nobody's had a skill set like Mario Lemieux with the size and what he could do and everything else. And even back then, we're going 30 years back, talking about how the league doesn't stand up for their top players, and what he called the muckers are the ones that are rewarded, right? And that's kind of what I see here in this series so far. And again, we're 30 years beyond Mario Lemieux making that statement. Shouldn't we have evolved as a league to get to the point where these type of tactics shouldn't be permitted against anybody, let alone the key? Remember, the players are the product. If they're not allowed to play, your product is not performing. I mean, you have now lost Brandon Hagel in this series, a 35-goal scorer, a 90-point performer, one of the guys who was on Team Canada. He's one of the best penalty killers in the league, and it's the most important time of the year. The spotlight is on the league more so than at any other point during the season, start of the playoffs and as we get deeper. And one of the game's brightest young players isn't available to play because somebody crossed a line and delivered a cheap shot headshot and concussed him. We assume it's a concussion. I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but we should be past it. Every other league, NBA, NFL, whatever it is, they go out of their way in a lot of ways to make sure their stars are protected. And one of the lines I used in what I wrote, like, we all grew up hearing the phrase, the other team's quarterback must go down, and he must go down hard. Who are now the biggest stars in the NFL? It's primarily the quarterbacks, right? And we can talk about, there's too much protection and everything. They're the star product. They are the faces of the NFL, and the league finally got to a point where they recognize that. Well, we got to do something better to protect them, to make sure that they're playing. And the NHL just hasn't got there. And it has to be frustrating, especially for Lightning fans, to see what's gone on in this series. A series, by the way, that it has, 2 game misconducts, 3 majors called, and none of them are fighting majors. It's the only series in around the league right now that's had a major called in any game. And we've had 3 of them, 2 suspensions. And it just feels like it's jumped the shark. And, I know John Cooper said he's tired of answering questions about a hit, trust me, we're tired of asking about them.
So I guess I would ask you the question, E, because I agree with you. It's you and I have talked about it. Mish and I have talked about it on this show. I think the organization or the league in general hasn't done a great job of promoting the game when it comes to their stars for a long, long time. I don't think that's going to change, and I'm not surprised. So what do you make of that? I mean, what needs to change that mentality? Because a lot of people will just say it's the, old boys network, and until that mentality changes, nothing's going to happen, and I tend to agree with that.
Well, that's the sad part, is that we can have this conversation and say it's great to talk about, but it's not going to change. It has to change. It has to change. You can't, like even the Mikkola hit on Gergensons, like that's targeted. That's done with malice, right? He sees a guy bent over and decides to slam his head into the boards. Ekblad was a target. And, I mean, the Hagel suspension, I understand why he was suspended. That was a hockey play that he misjudged, right? He of course, he wanted to hit Barkov, but I don't think he was targeting Barkov, right? Whereas Ekblad, and look, Brian Engblom was down on the ice after, game 2, and they all said, "You're next, Hagel. You're next. We're coming for you next." And they did. And they delivered. And now they've knocked him out of the series, presumably. Even if this goes 7. So it is archaic. And the only way that it can be deterred long term is that you've got to find a way to make NHL player safety a different department. Who have been the guys that have been running player safety? It's been the George Peroses, the Chris Prongers, right? Guys who made a living off of playing that style. And so if they're the decision makers, maybe there's a problem with the decision makers. And the GMs need to stay out of the way too, because the GMs drive this as well, because they don't want their players suspended, right? And here's the problem. The PA is just as guilty for this. They stand up for the guy who is suspended and about to lose money. They don't stand up for the guy that is out indefinitely, right? And that's the problem. We're more concerned with what happens to the player who's going to get suspended rather than for the reason he is suspended. And that's a mindset that just needs to shift, in my opinion.
Because it's hockey. It's hockey.
It's playoff hockey.
It's playoff hockey.
It's old school hockey. We love it that way. Look, we love the physicality of playoff hockey, but don't want to cross the line like this series.
Before Mitch jumps in, this is the same league. 4 Nations tournament in the middle of the year. Ratings are up. That is not translated into ratings in the playoffs. I can tell you that right now.
Yep.
And you had some players get injured. That's the mentality.
So I was wondering what you felt a solution or a variety of solutions might be, and kind of what you're advancing is almost like a mindset change.
Yep.
But on the micro level, I mean, you kind of called out the league here in your article, but what could the league have done differently, specifically like over the past week once the series got underway? Or is there nothing they could have done? I mean, they can't control what decision a player makes on the ice to deliver a hit. Or do you feel there were steps they could have taken to deter some of this?
Well, I actually think in a lot of ways the tone of this series was set in the first period of Game 1 when Matthew Tkachuk made a beeline for Nikita Kucherov. Now, Tkachuk got a penalty, and the Lightning did score on it. But they delivered the message right then and there. We're targeting your best players, and there's nothing you can do about it. And they've continued to do that. So what could have and what should have happened is the supervisor should have stepped in and say, look, we see what you're doing. You're going to start getting the penalties. Because a lot of the stuff, especially what happened in Game 3, like Cirelli got retaliatory penalties because of stuff that Florida was doing, right? Cirelli took a shot to the head, and then he was the one who was called for cross-checking Ekblad into the net, right? At the end of the second period, they went after Kucherov. Cirelli stepped in between. Who got the only penalty? Anthony Cirelli, right? Like, that's the kind of stuff that you're allowing the tactics of one team to influence how the other team. And look, maybe it's on the Lightning to react, and that's what they've talked about, having to deal with the way that Florida has approached this from that aspect. Florida's a really good team. Don't read anything that this is the reason the Lightning are down 3-1 in this series. But it's just the way and the manner in which they're allowed to continue to exercise these type of ways and approach to the game. And it's an intimidation factor. It's part of hockey. I know. I've had plenty of conversations with Brian Engblom, who's, played 40 years ago, but understands that that's still part of today's game, and it is. But there has to be a point where the league has to step in and go talk to both teams. Put an end to it right here and now, or we're going to start penalties and suspensions are coming at a more rapid rate. That is the only deterrent that the league can do to shift the behavior and the attitude of teams, because you're not seeing a lot of controversial hits and calls around the other series, right? I know there was the Zub hit on Tavares that a lot of people talked about, but you haven't seen too many of those type of crossing the line type of plays. It's been good, hard playing, good physical play in a lot of the other series, except this one.
What do you make of Crozier being called up?
Well, I mean, my initial thought is if you're calling him up, you're playing him, right? And I know what John Cooper said, and it's playoffs, so I don't take everything at 100% face value. So we'll see what happens at warm-up and whether Crozier is on the ice. But, I mean, Syracuse has an important game tomorrow night, and not that is a determining factor. But if you're going to take away Syracuse's top defenseman, as they're down 2-0 in their series to Rochester, if you're going to take him away from there and not play him here, why is he here? So we'll see. He was the last defenseman off the ice. We kind of look for clues sometimes. But he wasn't, Cam Atkinson stayed out there later. So, again, you try and read into things a little bit sometimes in what we try to figure out what the lineup may or may not look like. But John Cooper did say he doesn't anticipate Crozier playing. Didn't say he won't play. Said he doesn't anticipate him playing. So we'll see. I think Crozier's a part of this team next year. I don't know if that's part of the rationale here. It would surprise me if that was. But to me, if you're calling up Max Crozier, he should be in the lineup.
Who would come out?
So,
good question.
Would be a defenseman. I don't think they're going to dress 8.
Yeah.
No. That's what I mean. Like, it's a defenseman, obviously, who's...
Well, I mean, the two guys you would talk about would be Perbix and Radish, right?
Yeah.
Radish is running the second power play. So we'll see. We'll see. If that was the case, it would probably be one of those two guys. Yeah. Hedman didn't skate, but John Cooper did say he anticipates him playing.
Gotcha.
If the Lightning are going to extend the series, they need to win a home game.
It's crazy.
We talked about this on the show yesterday. It's really mind-boggling to consider the fact that the Lightning, who have been one of the best home teams in the NHL during John Cooper's head coaching tenure, have lost 8 of their last 9 home playoff games. Even the worst teams in the NHL that go through a 1-8 stretch on home ice, that's usually in like a 10-game span during the regular season in between road trips, or not including road trips, eventually they win a game. Like the stats tell you, the law of averages will tell you, eventually things will start to balance out, even for the worst teams in the NHL. What do you make of this record, and do you think that the tide will start to turn, hopefully tonight? Obviously, the Lightning needed to turn tonight, but I mean, that's a surprising stat based on how good the Lightning have been during the regular season.
I guess the easiest way to explain it is it's playoffs, and playoffs are just different, right? Like, I've used this stat quite a bit when these conversations come up, and in 2015, when the Lightning set a franchise record for home wins, where they won 32 home games during the regular season, they had a losing record at home ice going to the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah.
So they had a number of home games, and they had a losing record that year. And they were basically an NHL 500 team on the road, and they had a winning record on the road in the postseason. Playoffs are just different. It's the same team every night. Matchups shift around. Adjustments are made by both teams. I think, and look, you remember John Tortorella always used to say he actually wanted to start a playoff series on the road. The only time he cared about home ice was Game 7. right? And certainly that proved pretty fortuitous for Tampa Bay, especially in 2004. But to be able to get home ice for Game 7, you have to start at home. Playoffs, they're a different animal. Their approach different. Everybody's on the same page, right? You're not catching a team coming in off of a back-to-back, or you're not the team coming back from a long road trip. Like, there's just a lot that goes into the regular season record versus home record, and with this matchup in particular, the Panthers are very deep, so they don't care about matchups. Maybe as opposed to the Lightning, who want to get their matchups, especially with their D pairs. Florida, I don't think, cares as much about it. It's similar to what the Lightning were in 2021 and 22 on their runs. They didn't care who they played or where they played. They were so deep, they felt comfortable no matter who was on the ice. And I think Florida's just sort of in that same boat.
Looking ahead, because we do that, and I think it's interesting conversation. Mish and I talked about this on the show yesterday. If things don't work out tonight the way we hope, is this a key moment for this franchise in terms of maybe doing something pretty impactful in the off season to shake things up even more, in your opinion?
I don't know how much more you can shake it up than you did last year, right? Like, you saw a franchise icon step away or move on to another organization, and you moved a 25-year-old, potential Norris caliber type defenseman to get a little younger with Moser and bringing in Geeky, and you brought in Jake Gensel. I don't know, outside of a jaw-dropping move, what you can do, right? The only UFAs that I can think of right now are Yanni Gourde, who they've talked about they would like to try and re-sign. Cam Atkinson, who's not coming back anyway. Glendening is a UFA. Perbix is a UFA. Other than that, you get a lot of guys under contract. So
Johansson,
yeah, you'll need a backup goaltender. There's just not a ton short of a major shakeup that you could do to kind of shift the roster. And again, this is not 2019. I'm not trying to compare it, but
that's a guy that can,
they're close, right? They're close. Last year they weren't. Florida was by far the better team, but in against Toronto 2 years ago, I felt that the Lightning were the better team, and Toronto won 3 of those games in overtime. You're that close, right? You get a break here. I mean, the series clinching goal went off of 2 skates and ended up in the back of the net. This series has been very close. I know they're down 3-1. It's like you look at the Ottawa-Toronto series. Yeah, Toronto was up 3-0, but they were all close games, and they won 2 of them in overtime. So we shouldn't be shocked that it's 3-2 right now, because Ottawa was right there with them, and they did just a little bit more in these past couple of games, including having to win a game in overtime to get to 3-2. Like, teams are so close that I know if things don't go Tampa Bay's way in this series, everybody will say it's time to blow it up because you've exited in the first round 3 straight years, and we're spoiled. We're spoiled, right? We're used to seeing this team go on long runs. But they're close. They're close with this core. So I don't know if, other than a major, like I said, jaw-dropping sort of move, I don't know how much you can do, because this front office is so analytical in how they approach things, right? And in 19, the easy thing to do was blow it up. It's not working. They didn't do that. They tweaked a couple of things. They brought in Goodrow and Coleman at the deadline, and things worked out. Like, that's just the way the league is now. Everybody is so close that I don't know if overreacting to a playoff loss in a very parity-driven league is a reason to blow things up.
Last one for me, Eric. John Cooper was asked, I think it was a Florida reporter, trying to get him to say something nice about the Panthers' penalty kill, which I know they have to ask these questions. I'm sure that's not something John Cooper is going to spend a lot of time talking about, and he really didn't. But the question was about, why is the Lightning's power play a top power play during the regular season? Why has it gone 1 for 15 with 2 missed opportunities on majors? And the reporter teed it up for Coop to talk about how great the penalty kill is. He gave them credit, but he also said it's about executing. All right, fair enough. It's usually about executing. But beyond the fact that the Lightning haven't executed, I mean, are there things that you would like to see them do a little differently based on the fact that, they've gone 0 for their last 14 because they scored in their first chance in the series?
Well, it starts with a face-off. I think they've lost every power play or every face-off to start a power play. So it starts there. And then once they do, Florida clears the zone, now all of a sudden you get back in. And they're struggling to solve the entry level or the entry play. They're not getting in. Florida's really stacking the blue line and reading the drop. And we've seen them on the Lightning try to adjust. They kind of ditched the double drop a couple of times, to try and find different ways in. And then once they finally do solve it, no team pressures on the PK like the Florida Panthers. We know the Lightning don't like to be pressured. They want to set up and they want to create plays that way. And like the big thing for me, especially during that 5-minute power play in game number 4, was when they were in the zone, the pressure forces you into quick decisions. And they haven't made the right ones because passes are getting knocked down by sticks. They're getting deflected. They're going into players. They're not handling the pressure. And it's like I remember asking Rob Zettler this question before the series started, even before the regular season ended, that when you are on the ice doing special teams practices, do you simulate what the Panthers do? Because not many teams will pressure you the way they do. Carolina might do it as well. But you don't have time to practice against that type of pressure. So, and he said, yeah, we try. Sometimes we do it, but sometimes we also want to work on our PK. Right? So it's a balance that they have to do from a coaching standpoint. And it's just when they've gotten in the zone, they have not handled the way that Florida pressures the puck because the Lightning are just not comfortable in those situations and they haven't adapted.
I mean, before we let you go, what they've done, I think, to Nikita Kucherov in the series is easier said than done, but that's going to turn out to be probably one of the biggest things you're going to take away from it is the fact that he still hasn't scored a goal. I'm not sure he's made the big impact that we've seen him over the years make. And we can talk about power play. He's a big part of that. But a lot of things run through him offensively. And if he's not clicking, you can see things are a little bit off. It's a struggle.
Yeah, because especially with the power play, it's his power play.
Yep.
It is. It's just his power play. He wants to run things off the half wall. And he's good at it. Like, he's exceptional at it. But the Panthers aren't allowing that to happen. What I think, and we talked about this on Monday, is he has to shoot. He has to be a shot presence. He has to be a shot threat. Because otherwise, they're just going to play him to pass. And sometimes, a lot of times, he can beat that. He hasn't done that in this series just because, again, the way that the Floridas will come after the puck. If he shoots, and again, I know it was a different time, but in that series in 2021, when they first met in round 1, game 1, Kucherov did score 2 power play goals, right? And all of a sudden, now they got to overplay him because, oh my gosh, he can shoot the puck, right? Like, we know he can shoot the puck. So what happened in the third period when they needed a tying goal on the power play? Everybody sucked over to Kucherov for the shot. He found Braydon Point wide open on the bumper. Him shooting as a shot threat, I think, opens up the ice for him. But and it's not just him. There's a stubbornness on this power play not to shoot. We've seen Victor Hedman pass out of shot opportunities probably more times than we'd like as well. But there's always going to be that type of a spotlight when you're the back-to-back Art Ross Trophy winner and you're not producing at a time of the year when your team needs you, right? And he had the 3 assists in Game 3, and a couple of beauties. But he does have to show up on a more consistent basis and be the guy. Like, he has to be the guy in these situations. And Florida's done a good job of pressuring him and not making him feel comfortable. And, that when that happens, this is what you see sometimes.
Well, we appreciate you, buddy. Great article, and we'll catch you tonight, and we'll talk about it a little bit more with Chief. I'm sure Chief will have some things to say about tonight. What do you think?
Yeah. The off-air show will be much better than the on-air show.
All right.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks,
for dropping
Thanks,
in.
boys.
Appreciate you. Erik Erlendsson, LightningInsider.com, also part of Lightning Radio. We appreciate you breaking it all down, and Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair. Everything we talked about, especially with Cooch. I think Crozier's interesting dynamic. I don't know why you would bring him up just to practice with the team. I mean, to me, that makes some sense. Put the kid in.
And I mean, they didn't do it at the start of the series.
Yeah.
But right now they have 8 defensemen. We'll see. Maybe he's out there. Coop said he wouldn't be, and like Erik said, he was out late.
Gamesmanship, maybe, right?
Maybe a little bit. Yeah.
So.
He did get into 3 playoff games last year in the series, including the one game the Lightning won. See how he does.
Do we want to take questions? We've got several. Or is there anything
else
you want to touch on tonight?
Before we get to questions, I just want to touch on some of the stuff that we've seen around the league. High marks to Ottawa.
Yeah.
That was in part a goalie steal. I know they won 4-0, but I looked at the shots after the first period. I think they were 12-3 Toronto. Now, one of those shots from Ottawa that was not on net hit the post. They came close, but there was no question that Ullmark got them through that surge from Toronto. And I think I had seen that like 6 of the Toronto shots had come on power play. Toronto's power play has been very, very good. I'm talking about in the first period alone.
Right.
Toronto's power play has been very, very good in the series. And so it was not a script that Ottawa probably wanted. Ice tilted, power play Toronto. They got through at 0-0, and then Shabbat scores on a seeing eye shot, early second. And I don't think we're there yet, but boy, oh boy, if Toronto loses game 6, you talk about pressure. You talk about the weight of all the previous years on the shoulders of Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares, Riley, etc. If they lose game 6, that is going to be an extremely uncomfortable 48 hours or whatever between game 6 and 7.
Sure.
Anyway, there was that series. I am a little surprised the Kings are losing to Edmonton. Edmonton has won 3 games in a row. In all 3 games, they were down, and they rallied. Now, last night, it was 1-0. They tied it in the second, and then they got the game winner in the third. But coming back to beat the Kings, one of the best defensive teams in the NHL, in games 3 and 4, I mean, that turned that series on its ear, and it did look, at least metrically, like Edmonton outplayed the Kings last night. So, personally, I like the Kings. I like their team. I like the players that they have. I think they're well coached, but they are in jeopardy of losing their 4th straight series to the Oilers, and that would be a bitter, bitter pill. Carolina, the first team to advance. It took double overtime.
Yep.
Two games in that series went to double overtime. Each team won a game, but, I mean, the Devils jumped out to a big lead. So Carolina wasn't ready.
That's a tough one.
And hopefully we see that kind of pushback from the Lightning tonight, in that we're facing elimination. We're coming out guns a-blazing. Devils couldn't hold it, and Carolina did what they do. They eventually just overwhelmed the Devils. I think shots finished like 58-35 or something like that. And that's Carolina Hurricanes hockey. And the last one I'm going to mention, which is the other game, Minnesota and Vegas. I'm just going to say it. 2-2 game, under 2 minutes left. Ryan Hartman scores. Looks like it's 3-2 Minnesota. Goal wiped out due to an offside challenge. I mean, it was less than an inch.
Yeah.
Offside. But
didn't have an impact really on the play, but
didn't have it. I mean, Hartman carries it in and he just goes to the net. So no, it had no bearing on the goal being scored, and Vegas ends up winning in overtime where the Wild lost coverage on Brett Howden. He got open in front, open for a shot, prime area. He buries it. So Vegas is up 3-2, but that is a tough one for Minnesota. You think you scored the go-ahead goal with, 90 seconds left?
You think that rule's ever changed or tinkered with?
I don't know.
Should it?
I mean, we've banged this drum for a while. I mean, I think
does it hurt
once
the
you have it,
of
it's
play?
hard to take it away because the replays are always going to be there. And sometimes it's a fraction of an inch, and sometimes it's maybe, more than an inch. And when it's more than an inch and you don't have the replay, it looks pretty bad.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it also looks bad when a goal is wiped out really for no good reason. Like there was no effect. There was no advantage gained by Minnesota by the fact that the guy who was with Hartman was like a fraction of an inch early. But those are the rules that are in place. Anyway, those are the 4 games last night. Hopefully the Lightning can do what Ottawa did, which is extend the series to a 6th game.
From Black Flair on Instagram, Lilleberg and Perbix are not performing as well as we'd like. Feels like they're always on the ice when a goal is scored.
Well, that is an exaggeration. They were on the ice for the Lundell goal, but they were not on the ice for the 2-2 goal. They were not on the ice for the 3-2 goal.
They have struggled. I will say that.
At
I
times,
think
Greg,
times
but
they have
if
struggled.
we're going to compliment how the Lightning have defended in this series after Game 1, when they had a collectively bad game, all 7 defensemen in Game 1. But I think it's fair to compliment how the Lightning have defended in Games 2, 3, and 4 as a group. Then we should give credit to Lilleberg and Perbix. It's not like when they go out there, all of a sudden, the feel of the game changes. I mean, the Lightning have limited scoring chances since the first game.
It'll be interesting to see if that narrative plays out tonight if Crozier goes in.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you bring him
It's
in
possible.
and take one of those guys out if you don't think they're playing well.
Yeah. He has the experience playing with Lilleberg. I don't know if they would have them be a pair. They haven't really played together at all this year. And even last year in the playoffs, I'm trying to remember, because they played together during the regular season last year in the NHL, in Syracuse too, but in the NHL when they both came up. I think that Coop might have split them in the playoffs last year. We'll see. Right now, I would say take John Cooper at his word.
Yeah.
And that's how the lineup is going to look.
I'm going to say take his word and do the opposite. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Dustin says, I think the shakeup of the roster needs to be in the bottom 6. Glendening is great on the draw, but we need youth down there that can score and hit with size. The league about 10 years ago made size much less desirable because of the interference if you touch anyone coming over the blue line. That is long gone. You see pucks get dumped in now, and guys get run into a different area code before they can skate to the dumped puck. So maybe instead of old vets on the bottom 6, young, big, smart players in the bottom 6, whether that's from Syracuse or UFA.
Look, I trust Julien Brisebois to make, with his staff, the proper diagnosis of where they need to improve. I would not say that any move in the bottom 6, though, would be considered a quote-unquote shakeup. I mean, Glendening is on an expiring contract. He just turned 36. Yes, maybe the Lightning decide to bring him back, but if they don't, and they try and find another face-off specialist, let's call it, who's not 36, would that be considered a shakeup? I'm not sure it would. But there's no team that keeps the exact same roster, I guess, other than Winnipeg. When Jack Michaels was on, he was like, they have the exact same lineup as last year. And then they added Luke Shen at the deadline. So it's not quite the same. But most teams have some changes. You have players on expiring contracts. You make decisions about, how you want to rework your team. I think the question is, if the Lightning don't get out of the series, does Julien look to make more of a major shakeup? And Eric's points are good ones. Like, they made a lot of significant moves last offseason. But he might not be done. Who knows? There's going to be more cap room this year. Some of that is going to get eaten up by the Bjorkstrand contract based on where they were for much of this year. But not all of it. They're going to have more. They're going to have more room.
So I'll just say this. A wise man once told me, never hurts to listen. Never hurts to listen. You may not be willing to do anything, partner, but if somebody comes to you and offers you a king's ransom, knowing that the cap's going up too, and you might be able to take on a pretty big haul for one of your players, you at least think about it. You don't have to do anything. I think that's kind of where I'd be at this point.
Yeah.
Larry Brooks, by the way, from the Post. Did you see this? One of our listeners just forwarded me the tweet. Larry said today, partner, and this was 20 minutes ago, a fair amount of chatter about John Cooper, who signed a 1-year extension a year ago to take him through 25-26. 1 year seems odd. Plugged individual has told me not to be surprised if he leaves Tampa Bay to take over the operation in Utah, owned by close friend Ryan Smith.
What do you mean, take over the operation? Be the head coach?
That's what I would assume that would be.
Yeah.
That's what I would mean. You're going to hear that. If the Lightning get bumped, I'm just bracing everybody right now. You're going to hear some of that chatter. Now, look, I think Larry has a pretty good reputation. Good and bad.
Yeah,
I mean,
he does.
Larry Brooks, he's somebody who
he's not
dialed in
like
a little bit.
Injected into the NHL's bloodstream like Elliot Friedman is, right? Or
Yeah.
some of these guys. But Larry Brooks is a well-known, well-respected. I mean, he gets into it sometimes with John Tortorella. But in terms of, he's not just going to like throw stuff out there willy-nilly. Usually, let's just put it this way, he's old school. He's going to make sure that the information he has is at least, it's not going to be somebody just whispering something in his ear. He's going to try and get some secondary confirmation.
Who did he get into it with? I mean, he's gotten into it with several. Was it Torts?
Torts, yeah.
Was there somebody? Was there a player too? I feel like maybe.
Probably.
As well.
So Larry Brooks got into it with Torts when Torts was coaching the Lightning. And the Lightning played the Devils in 2007 because Torts knew Larry Brooks because he had some time briefly, the first time, briefly in New York before he became the Lightning's head coach. Then later, of course, he went back to New York and was coach there for several years. So they got into a shouting match. I think it was after one of the games in New Jersey because Larry was there covering it. Maybe the Rangers were already eliminated. I can't remember why he wasn't covering the Rangers at that time. And then, of course, they had a lot of tete-a-tetes when Torts was coaching the Rangers from like the late 2000s to whatever, 2013. So
he's got credentials. He's a national guy.
I mean, people are already.
in many ways.
When we start seeing these stories though about Coop, people are already writing the Lightning off, and I know some of the fans were like, "It'll take a miracle for them to come back." Look, as they say, one game at a time. When
I
we
agree.
wake up tomorrow,
Yeah.
we get ready to do our show. If the Lightning will have won tonight, people are going to be looking at the series a little differently, just like they're looking at the Toronto-Ottawa series a little differently now that Ottawa's won a couple of games. Was it easy for Ottawa?
I feel
Were
like
there moments where they might have gone out? Yeah. They had to kill a 4-minute penalty in overtime in Game 4. And, I mean, the Leafs, they did everything but score. They did everything but score during that 4-minute power play. Pucks around the net, scramble plays, Allmark's diving, knocking pucks away. Matthews gets a rebound off the outside of the post. I mean, like, it was right there. Series over. Instead, puck stays out.
Listen.
Ottawa scores, and you play on. And look at Carolina and New Jersey. Carolina got the 4-minute power play.
They did.
And Aho drills it in. Series over.
I have to think all these years of disappointment, you've got to grow from that if you're Toronto. I'd like them to win that series, but I understand they got to show some people. But, I mean, you got to learn from your failures, and they have failed. And if you do think they're a really good team and they're going to take that next step, they should be able to put that loss behind them and say, it's done today.
Yeah.
And that
You're
next
talking
game,
about for
it's
Game
over.
6?
Yeah,
or,
it's over.
Yeah.
Game 6.
We'll see.
We got it.
I'm just saying, like, the writ large perspective of a series can change from game to game.
They can, for sure.
So we'll see where things stand tomorrow. Either the Lightning will be getting ready for
what hurts tonight?
The exit interviews, and we can dive into some of these questions that we've fielded and we've brought up ourselves in the last couple of days, or we're going to be looking ahead to a Game 6.
I think what makes tonight's game even more frustrating for a Lightning fan not having your full lineup is the fact that if, Hagel is presumably, out, obviously, Bjorkstrand isn't it.
Yeah, I know.
That's the part that hurts here. If you thought depth scoring was an issue, and a lot of people felt like that was the case, you and I talked about that for a good portion of the year, they go out and address it, but then one of those key guys is out, and then you lose one of your star players. I mean, I don't care who you have coming up from Syracuse or somebody being the next man up mentality. I mean, partner, combined, how many goals does Bjorkstrand and Hagel have? 50? 50
yeah,
plus?
because Hagel had 35.
Yeah, so 50 plus.
20.
Let's just say 50 plus. I mean, that's not a small number. So I think the Hagel loss gets magnified even more when Bjorkstrand isn't there. And
of course.
I think
this
that's
was
a problem.
The Lightning would have been more capable
Yes.
of handling, and I guess it kind of depends on who would have gotten hurt to the point that they were missing.
Yeah.
But they were probably more well equipped to handle a blow to the defense core
Correct.
than the forward unit. I mean, we just talked about Crozier.
Yeah.
We feel confident Crozier could come in and step right in.
Sure.
So he's their 8th defenseman.
Right.
Forward, a little different. You know,
Yeah.
They're asking Connor Geekie to basically boomerang back from, he went to the minors to get his game in order, and it seemed like he did. But, he is a first-year pro. He's not like Gonsalves,
I had some people ask
who
me
had the benefit of a lot of reps in the pro game. So now you're basically forced
Yeah.
to push Geekie to this spot. Because I think had Bjorkstrand stayed healthy and had the Lightning not had to deal with this Hagel situation once the playoffs began, I mean, I don't know that Geekie would be up. Geekie might still be in Syracuse.
I've had some people ask about Connor Sherry, and are we surprised we haven't seen him?
I mean, they
because-
have that as an option. They've decided not to call him up.
No. And I think they not owe it to Geeky, but he's been up here, and I think they're giving him that experience too.
He's
I think
got
this
the
is,
size, and I
Yeah,
mean, this is
he
a
does.
physical series.
Makes sense.
It's interesting. Like Erik was talking about, you don't see this in the other series, the kind of over the line play. And really, I mean, he was talking about the Panthers. If we had a subset of Florida Panther fans on, and we held a forum with fans from the other side, they would make an argument that Hagel crossed the line with Barkov.
Yeah, heck yeah. For sure.
I'm not going to argue with that. He got the major. He got suspended. Like Erik said, he's making a play in the puck. I think if you talk to different people, it's like I think you even said Hagel was annoyed about the boarding situation with Verhaeghe. Okay. You want to grant that? Grant that. I still think it's a little more gray, but it was a violent hit. There's no question. It was a violent hit. The Panthers have done more of this, though, in the series. And certainly over the last couple of years, there was enough evidence to see that they have a history of this. We mentioned the Kulikov hit. Actually, I think Jay Retcher and I did the show. But, I mean, Kulikov absolutely blew up Wenberg with a dirty hit in the neutral zone last year in the Eastern Conference Final. What about Sam Bennett elbowing Marchand? I mean, how about Bennett, and this is going back a few years, he hurt his team in, was it the 21 series? He boarded somebody on the Lightning, which put the Lightning on the power play. That's how they tied game 1.
Yeah.
So
they have a history, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
There's
and
a track
I think
record.
Fans will be like, "You're not remembering this right." Wasn't Bennett might have gotten suspended actually in that 2021 series? I may not be remembering it right. I could probably look that up. Pretty
Dave, I'm
easily.
sure we have people who are going to let us know.
Yes,
with that happening.
Well, we're on live radio, and live YouTube and everything else. I'm going to quickly look up and see if Bennett played in all of those games. But I remember he took what we would call a bad penalty.
He did.
Which opened the door for the Lightning to get back in that game. Yeah, he only played 5 of the 6 games. He was suspended, so my memory isn't completely gone. So look, this has followed the Panthers around. This was not like big rivalry series, and both teams crossed the line, and this is an unusual series based on the other 7 series. It's like this is kind of how the Panthers have done it in the playoffs. And, that kind of, it dovetails in a way with what Erik was writing about, which is the league, on some level, they have allowed the Panthers to kind of march on this path and not make any adjustments. Now, yes, have their players sometimes gotten penalties and maybe suspended? Sure. But it hasn't stopped them. They've continued to do it.
And that player was Blake Coleman, as
it was Coleman. Okay,
as Steve just texted. So, I get it. I mean, I think you're right. Was there a way that the league could have grabbed a hold of the series from the start and not let it get out of control? knowing the history of the Panthers.
Yeah.
But you can say it was initiated by a lot of people's point of view from the Lightning. In other words, if Hagel doesn't do what he did, are we seeing the reactions every game from Florida?
They were upset about the hit on Barkov, and Panther fans are very, very upset about the hit on Barkov. But Tkachuk went after Kucherov in the first period of Game 1.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the tone that they have wanted to set. And I think the Hagel hit, in their mind, now they had every right to do it. I mean, they probably would have. I don't know that Ekblad would have done what he did had Hagel not hit Barkov.
Yeah, you're probably not targeting Hagel as much.
Maybe
as
not, but
you know.
But this is kind of on brand with how they've approached not just this series but other series as well. I mean, the Tkachuk play on Kucherov happened before the Hagel hit on Barkov.
Sure. Sean says, does the way our team can be shut down by such basic strategies, such as a mix of forechecking and trapping, does that not suggest that the way this team is constructed is fundamentally flawed at its core?
No. No. All right, so we just talked about how the Panthers toe the line and sometimes go over the line. Let's give this team some credit. Please, fans. They are playing Stanley Cup championship defense. You can draw up whatever you want on the board. You can go with whatever XO strategy you want to go with when we talk about executing.
Right.
The Panthers are executing. And they're executing because they have a championship pedigree. We have been talking about this the whole series. They have done this with great success over the last couple of years. This is how they have played in the playoffs. They know how to do it, and they are doing it at an extremely high level. They bleed just like every other team bleeds. We talked about that. They had some miscues in Game 3, and the Lightning took advantage. Let's take out the empty netter. The Lightning scored 4 goals. They had odd mans. There were breakdowns. It just hasn't happened in the series that much. It's not that, well, as I have to say, the Panthers, they've cracked the code. Like, there is no code, all right? If there was one solution to stopping a dangerous offensive attack, every team would do it against every dangerous offensive team. Or you want to say the Lightning play a certain way. Every team would try and game plan to do this one thing against the Lightning. It's not what your game plan is. It's how are you executing that game plan with the personnel that you have. That's my belief. Why are the Lightning 1 for 15 on the power play? Yeah, some of it is they haven't executed. But John Cooper's not going to answer the question. I will. The Florida Panthers have been virtually perfect on the penalty kill. They're doing everything extraordinarily well. They've made like no mistakes. The first power play in which Gensel scored, they had a breakdown in front. Hagel was the guy who was open. Bobrovsky made the save on him. That's been one of the rare mistakes they made on the penalty kill. And even the goal that Gensel scored, I mean, to Erik's point, it was just a shot. Like it was a Kucherov shot that led to a rebound. And maybe they need to simplify more. And that the Lightning have to own. But I don't know. Maybe I'm howling in the wind here. Maybe I'm in the minority.
You mentioned the power play. Do we have power play face-off percentage? Do we have that?
Erik said they hadn't won one power play face-off to start a power play. I'm not sure if that's entirely accurate.
Yeah.
May feel like it. Look who's walking in the house here. Braydon Coburn.
Kobe.
Maybe join us for the end of the show. All right, we'll get Kobe's take on this as we switch cameras and turn on his microphone. You got his microphone there, Steve? All right. There he is. So Kobe. We just had a fan question. Got me fired up.
Yep.
So the question was, is it basically the Lightning's kryptonite to face a team that like mixes up trapping and forechecking? And I'm like, the Florida Panthers are playing championship level defense. You can have any XO setup you want. It's about how are you executing that with the personnel that you have? And this is a team that has played championship level defense in the playoffs for the last 2 years. So that was my answer.
Yeah.
I mean, but give me your opinion.
I don't think when you watch the Florida Panthers, you are mistaken about what their identity is. They don't deviate from that identity. There's always going to be adjustments in a playoff series, and even when you win a playoff series, you might have seen a couple different couple different looks that the other team, the other coach threw in what they're generally doing, and the Lightning do the same thing. You know, they're changing little things on the PK, little things on the power play, whether maybe they're bringing a third man a little bit higher to try to loosen up some some defensive zone coverages. But you're always going to find adjustments like that, but you have to kind of stick to your general identity. Absolutely, Mish. Like
in other words, there's no kryptonite.
There's no kryptonite. Yeah. It's execution. It's execution and what's working and what's not working. And I don't think that this is, news to anyone. I think the Lightning, they're not at the same level of execution that they've needed to be in the games that haven't been able to come out on top.
Kobe, let me ask you this. What do you make of Crozier being brought up? And within reason, because look, you are what you are at this point. Any small, big adjustments you can make tonight, whether it's more ice time for one group, whether it's less ice time for one group, maybe personnel with the line combinations. Is there anything you are thinking like, hey, maybe this can jumpstart them a little bit more tonight?
You can always change the lines a little bit. I know that I'm thinking back to 2015. We're playing the Chicago Blackhawks in the final, and Joe Quenneville mixes up his forward group. We had some success against some of the matchups, and he changed around some of the guys, and it really did have an effect on how we were able to defend against those guys, because you do get used to playing certain guys and understanding how they're going to play a certain way with other people, and maybe we'll see some sort of adjustment like that. That's something that, Cooper's been around the game a long time, and he's very good at those kind of tactics. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of different look that we're going to see. Obviously, with Hagel being out, there's going to be a different look regardless. But that's something I'm really interested to see going into Game 5 if he's going to jumble those lines up a bit.
What do you make of Crozier, too, just being brought up? I mean, is that one of those where you don't bring him up if you're not going to play him? I mean, we saw him last year in the playoffs. He did well.
Yeah.
Maybe get caught up in a numbers game this year in terms of cracking the lineup. But I know everybody who's seen him play and watched him, they love what he's doing.
He's a smart player. I know the organization is extremely high on him for good reason. He's a good player. Sometimes when you put a new guy in the lineup, and this has been the case in the past, you bring a guy up from Syracuse, they bring a new level of enthusiasm and energy. Not that you're lacking those in the playoffs anyway, but it's just a new person in the locker room, a new kind of element. So if he draws in tonight, I think he'll be fine. He's a smart player. Have I thought that the Lightning defense have played particularly poorly? No.
Not since Game 1 anyway.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But, it's just we'll see. And then who comes out? And are they going 11-7 again? I don't think, from what I've heard so far, John Cooper hasn't revealed his hand on that as we speak.
Well, he said Crozier was not in, and Hedman and Cirelli, who took the option this morning, are going to be in. So it looks like that they're basically going to go back with the lineup from game number 3.
Right, with Geekie coming in?
Yeah, with Geekie coming in. So the way it looks like the lines are going to be run, and we actually saw them start game 4 this way, is that your line with 2 forwards is the Cirelli line. There's Cirelli and Hagel for game 4. It'll be Cirelli and Gonsalves tonight based on how they ran the lines. That's my interpretation from the morning skate. We went into the series with the expectation that when the Lightning had last change, they would try and get Cirelli's unit out against Barkov's unit with McDonough and Chernak. That has not always been the case when the Lightning have had last change. Sometimes we've seen points line out there, et cetera, et cetera. Who do you think they'll put out against the Barkov line? And is it harder to do it with Cirelli when Cirelli has a roving third forward with him?
Yeah, I think, when you're rotating those forwards like that, you get your normal interval of rest gets thrown off a little bit. It's not like you're playing a shift and then you're waiting maybe 1-2 shifts. You're getting a shift and then you're, maybe back to back and then you're having a longer break. So I think that normal interval of what you expect to kind of roll out and that using that matchup type of thing. But I think at this point, John Cooper is going to have the attitude. And he's going to kind of express on the guys, regardless of who you're out against. I need you to just do your job and figure it out and get it done for me, because everyone's going to have to.
Lastly, on my end, Kobe, when you see, Hagel go down the way he did, and this has been physical, and the Panthers have gone over the line a bit, the focus is obviously winning tonight. But somebody who is a physical player yourself, does that enter into your head at all today when you are finishing your checks, when there's a scrum around Vasi to send a little bit more of a message, knowing that the Panthers certainly have done that throughout the series?
Well, Greg, first off, I got to tell kind of a funny story about being in the booth with Mish. And, I think initially we saw it. We saw Hagel on the ground. We weren't sure exactly what happened. We watched the replay, and we saw Ekblad and, just the severity and really how dirty it was. And, Mish gets, he is famous for his energy and for after the goals. But I thought I was going to have to grab Mish's ankles, because I thought he was going to float right outside the broadcast booth. He was just, so enraged, and I was feeling the same thing. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to match Mish's energy here.
Well, I backed out because I saw it, and I'm like, this is horrible. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm sitting next to a guy who will tell me if it, in fact, was horrible. So I actually got fired up, and then I was like, well, wait a minute. You're the player? Tell me. Am I off here? And you were like, no,
that's bad. And I was
dirty.
Like, yeah, that's, but that's stuff that happens during playoffs. I don't think that he was particularly aiming for his chin like it happened. I think he was going for kind of the upper chest to try to bend him backwards to send him kind of like what we call like tabletop him. But, regardless, he got him on the head. And
that was his argument to the DOPS, by the way. I don't know if you heard that. He said, I wasn't aiming for his head. And they either didn't believe him or just said, well, too bad.
Well, yeah, regardless, you have to control. Like, there's only one person that control. When you get a high sticking penalty, the ref looks at you like, I didn't mean to do that. Well, you control your stick, so regardless if you can control it or not, like, you're responsible for your actions. And do I think that he meant to do it? I think maybe a small part of it said, like, I'm going to finish high here, and if it gets him on the chin, then so be it. That's just what it is. But
yeah.
Sorry, Greg. I kind of went off tangent.
No, it was more of like tonight for you, like as somebody who was physical, the Lightning, you don't want to do something that you're not accustomed to doing, but you want to win tonight. That's the most important thing. But you also know that they have taken some hits with some of your players, and is that factoring in a little bit to how you're approaching to be physical tonight against the Panthers?
Listen, coming in, I would just be pissed off.
Yeah.
I'd be pissed off that they've taken some liberties with some of our guys, and that, you don't want to put your team on a you don't want to go to the penalty box and you don't want to give the Panthers a 5-minute major to try to score on you guys, but you want to make sure that when you're hitting to eliminate, to get the puck back, but there's a certain element of nastiness that are going to be in that. And that was my attitude. I'm sure it's a lot of guys' attitude, but you're pissed off. Like, Hagel's a guy that he's important to your team. He's one of the guys you're going to need him to take you to the promised land, and he's not in the lineup. So guess what? We're going to have to really buckle down and bring that element of physicality. And I think that's something that when the Lightning play with that attitude, that we are just like going to punch you in the mouth and not back down, and we're going to just play tough defense, and we're going to be just like courageous and all those kind of things and stick together. For me, that's the element of the secret sauce for the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Man, I just get chills knowing Kobe and Tom Wilson dropped it a couple of times in Game 7. That got me going, and we'll see what happens tonight. Lightning need a win, and then let's live to fight another day and talk about what they got to do in the next game. Kobe, great job as always. We'll see you down at the rink tonight. This should be a fun one.
Yeah, sorry to crash. I was just coming.
You're always allowed to crash.
Steve Versnick. And,
well, you had a busy morning because you and Big Rig, right?
We had the block. We had the Big Rig on the block party. Just like, seeing that guy, and we were sharing stories, and he's like, I don't think I could tell this story, but now that I'm retired, let's go ahead and tell it. And I'm like, Big Rig, no, we can't do that. He's like, he's not afraid, and every story with Big Rig starts with, I think we were drinking a little too much, and then this happened. So it'll be.
That's what
I
makes
think
it good, though.
Maybe he'll provide the secret sauce tonight.
Yeah,
that's right.
You know what? He. I know he went in there and he talked to the boys after the pregame skates. So hopefully, good words of advice from a 3-time Stanley Cup champion and obviously a guy that's got tremendous amount of good mojo.
For sure. Kobe, thank you, sir. We'll talk to you tonight.
Thanks, Kobe.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Braydon Coburn joining us right there. And on that note, partner, we will end the show. But 7:30 start, which means we're on the air at 7. Breaking it all down. I'll talk to you in the Hall of Famer as we get a little closer to puck drops. And I'm sure
Hopefully
Phil
we'll have a
few
happy recap tomorrow morning.
Yeah. I think we're all hoping for it. Regardless, we're going to be here for our audience, and I think that's all we can do. And if we didn't get to your questions, we'll get to them tomorrow as well. All right, partner. Great job, as always. Thanks to Steve Ersnick. Thanks to Jared Johnson and everybody for listening. We always appreciate you guys. Game tonight. Recap it tomorrow on Lightning Radio.